The Fire Emblem Heroes 2024 meta was unlike anything we'd ever seen before. We had the introduction of 2 new hero types in Aided and Emblem heroes. We had the introduction of Emblem rings, forever changing how units could be built, the ability to give our favorite heroes aids, and of course a level of power creep my 2017 self could never imagine. So what better way to discuss the meta than counting down the top 10 meta units of 2024. Just to clarify, these are the heroes who had the largest impact on the Ether Raids, Summoner Duels, and Arena meta. If you do not know what the meta is or how heroes become meta, then check out my video on that topic. There will be a link in the description down below. One final thing before we start is that this will not include all the newest heroes as we haven't seen their full meta impact quite yet. But with that said, let's get started with number 10. At number 10, we have the king of calves, Emblem Sigurd. While Emblem Sigurd did not completely destroy the game like his legendary version, he did set a new precedent for mobility with his Gallop bonus effect that gives him 5 movement and AoE nuking with his unique preference skill, Override. And if insane AoE damage with the biggest AoE range we have ever seen wasn't enough, Sigurd also gets a free extra action as well. Emblem Sigurd was the second major melee threat that helped to push both Ether Raids and Summoner Duels meta towards near saves and powerful frontliners. Emblem Sigurd quickly claimed his place in the meta, enabling powerful Gale Force teams in Ether Raid's offense, acting as one of the best nukes in Ether Raid's defense, and slotting extremely well into several Summoner Duels teams, including the famous Pathfinder team, where of course Brave Crom could also copy his Gallop, creating yet another 5 movement threat. Emblem Sigurd has cemented his place in the meta, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. In 9th place, we have the queen of Summoner Duels, Attuned Micaiah. She is easily one of the best examples of row compression, effect compression, and power creep of this year. Attuned Micaiah not only offered the insane support of Omni Guidance, Penalty Cleansing, 10 HP healing, Discord, exposure, massive global debuffs, but was also an insanely good nuke with effective versus armor and cavalry damage. She also had massive daunts which made her deceptively bulky and difficult to take down. Attuned Micaiah absolutely dominated the Summoner Duels meta, where she has over a 90% usage rate in almost every SD event since her release. Of course, Micaiah wasn't only limited to Summoner Duels and is fantastic in Ether Raids on both offense and defense due to her clutch penalty cleansing. Overall, Micaiah is one of, if not the most versatile unit in the entire game. Coming in at 8th is our first Brave unit of the year, Brave Robin. The key effect that allowed Brave Robin to take over the Ether Raid's defense meta was on-demand ice terrain. Not only that, on ARD, it pops out on the attacker's turn 1, meaning that even turn 1 Gale Force teams have to contend with this annoying terrain. Robin's ice terrain essentially forced opponents to have to rethink how they approach teams, as they not only had to contend with traps, but also using up precious actions to destroy the ice terrain by either attacking or using their own terrain to override it. But if it was just that, Robin wouldn't be this high up. Robin also offered some powerful support in the form of Cancel 1, Panic, and Hush Spectrum, a key penalty to shutting down powerful Omni tanks like Ike and Tamara. You combine this with decent nuking and a flexible build, and you get an all-star unit in both Ether Raid's defense and Summoner Duels. The unit who revived saves is in our 7th place, Duo Fjorm. Throughout the first half of the year, saves were in a terrible place. You essentially had 1 to 2 options, and even then they often exploded to a ton of different ranged and melee nukes. This all changed with the arrival of Duo Fjorm and also Shield Fighter. Now what makes Duo Fjorm so exceptional is the combination of her high speed and her preference special Dual Ice Mirrors. Dual Ice Mirrors is a low cooldown, meaning it works perfectly with Shield Fighter, but also offers insane damage reduction, distinct counter, and damage reduction piercing, but of course the biggest effect has to be damage reflection, allowing Fjorm to explode her enemies. Duo Fjorm quickly became the benchmark all ranged nukes had to be tested against, and the cherry on top was that Fjorm had a duo skill that allowed her to surround herself with ice terrain, even protecting herself and her team from melee threats. Overall, Fjorm has proven to be a top tier far save, though recently there has been some tough competition. After 7 long years of waiting, my boy Nurgle finally has arrived in Fire Emblem Heroes, and man was he worth the wait. Nurgle is the perfect combination of nuke, tank, but most importantly support. Nurgle's unique bonus, Essence Drain, allows him and his teammates to steal all the bonuses of the enemy team after 1 single attack, and on top of that, it even offers a bit of healing. Essentially, this allows Nurgle to immediately become a terror in the meta, as Faye has been massively pushing new bonuses for the past 2 years. What added to this was that Nurgle himself didn't have to attack, and the unit who did attack didn't even need to survive, just steal damage, and it also stole bonuses from all foes within 2 spaces, and teleported those bonuses back to any ally with essence drain themselves. This made Nurgle excellent on Aether defense, as he could act as a way to check all the bonus stacking Omni tanks or saves, and in some riddles he could easily cripple entire teams that were reliant on bonus effects to perform their strategy, such as extra movement or even triangle attack. While Nurgle has seen some counterplay in the form of dosage in a recent banner, Nurgle continues to be a deadly threat every player must be prepared to play against. Every couple of years, Intelligent Systems decides to release a new toxic goat from the farm to destroy the meta. This year, that goat was the overtuned, completely busted Hathrin. Hathrin is easily one of the most powerful mythics to ever be released. This is due to the combination of her insane bulk and completely ridiculous support in the form of her new bonus, Divine Nectar. Divine Nectar essentially allows allies to get 10 flat damage reduction, get a Breath of Life 4 effect that heals for 20, neutralizes deep wounds, and grants an extra action once per turn to a unit who uses a positional skill. That's on top of Hathrin's natural support of Discord, Deep Wounds, and Anti-Miracle. When you combine all of these together, you get a hero who shows up in every single game mode and warps the meta in all of them. Hathrin quickly became a staple in Summoner Duels as a frontliner who also massively increased your save's survivability, and in Aether Raids, she ended up in every single season, even with the threat of losing score. Hathrin is one of the most overtuned units to ever exist, and I sincerely pray we do not get an ult of her, ever, or we will have 2 of her in every single game mode. Throughout the history of the meta and Fire Emblem heroes, there have been a lot of toxic, unfun units, but never has there been a hero on this level of insanity, a hero who literally didn't let the opponent play the game. Duo Leon. Duo Leon on release completely and utterly warped the entire game around him. Not only was he clearly the best hero in the game, but he was on his own tier above the others. This unit became the face of toxicity in every single game mode, and this was all due to his unique ability to end turns whenever he attacked. And of course, because that wasn't enough, he had a duo skill that let him shut off the turns of every foe in cardinal directions as well. You combine the most toxic effect in the game with one of the best nukes in the game, who had ridiculously high burn damage, and even the safety net of a sweep effect, which made it difficult to counterattack to kill him. And you get possibly the most toxic hero to ever exist. I would not be surprised if more than 1,000 players quit the game just because of Duo Leon. Now you may be thinking, if Duo Leon was that bad, how is he not number 1? And the answer to that is simple. Leon got countered not once, but twice. First, he was soft countered by Breath of Life 4, which severely nerfed his burn damage, but then Intelligent Systems decided to essentially dumpster him with Firm Canto Curve, which completely negated his end turn effect. And the truth is, even after all of that, Duo Leon is still an exceptionally powerful hero on the right team with the right feud skill. Duo Leon may have become the poster boy for toxicity, but in my heart, Leon will always be one of my favorites. Did you think we were done with the Valentine's banner? Not quite. We have one of the most meta-shattering units in Valentine's Mer. Now to set the stage, at the time of Mer's release, the meta had been completely controlled by warp effects. The year prior, we had introductions of insane skills like Guidance 4, Soaring Guidance, and legendary Noka, who offered charge to her flying compatriots. Then Mer showed up and offered an amazing counter in the form of Warp Bubble, which essentially shut down all warping. What really made Mer's anti-warp so strong is that she combined the role of anti-warp support with a far save, which was an essential role in both Aether Raids, defense, and Summoner Duels. On top of that, she offered Warp Bubble to an ally as well, meaning that even after she died, the opponent would be dealing with the anti-warp for the rest of the turn. Like I mentioned earlier, saves were in a bad spot for the entire first half of the year, but Mer was the sole save who remained relevant the entire time. This was also partially due to the introduction of Celica Ring, where anti-warping became absolutely vital. Her Warp Bubble became the key counterplay for the dominance of warping and helped shift the meta for this entire year. At the beginning of 2024, Omni tanks were essentially dead. The meta was full of mobile, high-power nukes, and Omni tanks just couldn't keep up. This began to change with the introduction of a new wave of Omni tanks, led by Desert Altina and Attuned Sheeta, but the hero who really brought Omni tanks back was absolutely Emblem Ike. Emblem Ike shaped the Omni tank meta in 3 big ways. First, he introduced Lagoose Friend 4, an insane skill that offered almost the key effects that every Omni tank would need, and is still to this day the key skill for most Omni tanks. He also introduced the Emblem Ike Ring, which offered an additional layer of non-pierceable damage reduction for Omni tanks to take advantage against deadly ranged threats. But most importantly, Emblem Ike was completely broken. This unit honestly felt 6 months ahead of any other unit being released. He has up to an incredible 70% non-pierceable damage reduction, complying with 20% flat damage reduction. He has a massive nuke in his preference special that also does chip damage while also massively healing himself, and of course he has built-in no counter disrupt, removing one of the major weaknesses many Omnitakes were suffering from. Emblem Ike quickly worked the entire game around himself. Every single game mode became the how do you kill Ike test. Ike dominated Aetheryte's offense, summoner duels, arena, and even became a check on Aetheryte's defense, as many players just couldn't kill him. But with even all that said, what kept Ike dominating was the fact he constantly was getting upgrades in the form of new skills and supports such as Lumera, Fallen Lumera, Breath of Life 4, Creation Pulse, Fortifications, Baby Robin, Harmonic Nephany, and so much more. In my opinion, Emblem Ike continues to be the best Omnitake in the game even after 9 months since his release, though he does have a bit of competition now. Before we get to number 1, I want to talk about a couple of honorable mentions. First up is Emblem Celica. Just to clarify, I wanted to focus on the heroes themselves with this list, so that is why I have Celica at number 11. If we're talking about her emblem ring, she could easily be number 2 or even argue for number 1. The Emblem Celica ring completely changed the game with its insane warping, but when it comes to Celica herself, she definitely didn't have the same impact as Sigurd or Ike. She did cause a big meta shift in Aetheryte's defense, as she could easily sneak past units like Gatekeeper or Omnitanks to destroy the back line, and she still continues to do that to this day, especially with the help of the next honorable mention. Okay, I know I said I didn't include all the new heroes on this list, but I think it would be stupid to not give at least one honorable mention to Lathreder. I expect this unit to be high up on next year's list, but honestly, who knows? Lathreder has only been in the game for 1 month at the time of this recording, but has already shown insane influence in both Aetheryte's defense and summoner duels. His crippling ability to turn your weakest units into saves, on top of insanely crippling debuffs, makes him one of the most annoying units to deal with. And I think this value will only be going up with the introduction of our newest emblem hero, Lyn. My final honorable mention I want to give out is one of the most underrated heroes released this year, Bridal Emblem. Bridal Emblem is honestly one of the most powerful heroes in the game. Her ability to completely turn off saves makes her one of the best supports in Aetheryte's offense. She also offers the ability to charge her own and her support partner's special every single turn, allowing Gale Force to be easier than ever. And once again, I think her value is only going to be going up from here on out. With that said, it's time to reveal our most meta hero of 2024. You know it, I know it, everyone knows it, it's Brave Felix. Never in a million years did I think Felix would be this ridiculously powerful and Fire Emblem heroes. Brave Felix just does it all. First of all, he's an extremely mobile melee threat with up to 3 actions, without even using the Gale Force special. But what makes him different than a unit like Edelgard or Golveg is that his second action does not require combat. This essentially allows Felix to have 6 spaces of movement while also having Disarm Trap, as he can easily proc a trap and still gain that action. You combine that with a unit who introduced Slaying 2, has distant counter, hits like a truck, is the best user of Gust in the game, is surprisingly tanky, and you get a unit who is essentially great at everything. Felix completely outclassed every other Gale Forcer and completely warped Aetheryte's offense around himself. He quickly became a massive threat in Aetheryte's defense as well because of the Celica ring, which essentially allowed him to warp into the back line and go on a killing spree. And in summoner duels, Felix acted as a premier melee nuke who could destroy entire teams by himself, while also providing action economy and crazy threat range. Felix became so dominant that near saves and frontliners became meta in summoner duels, something that was laughed at the year before. Brave Felix has proven to be the terror of Fire Emblem heroes, but at the same time, one of the most fun heroes to ever exist. Because of that, he is my number 1 meta hero of 2024. And that is going to be my top 10 meta heroes of 2024. There are a ton of heroes I would have loved to add to this list, but I wanted to focus on the units who changed the meta itself. With that said, I'd love to hear from you. What does your top 10 look like? Who would you move up or down? What did I get wrong? And of course, who is your favorite meta hero of the year? Drop a comment down below, let me know. As always, I'd like to thank all my members for their constant support, and if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. This has been Oblivion. I'll catch y'all later with more Fire Emblem heroes.